Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading.
Now today we'll be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 18th of September 2018, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us begin with the first article. Now we've taken this editorial from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this article talks about is the Indo-US relationship, wherein the author is trying to make an argument that there is a risk of India becoming a follower of the United States. And the author makes an argument that India must trade with caution of not being entrapped in what is called the US based global order. And therefore, what we'll try to understand from this editorial is how there is a risk of India becoming a follower of a US dictated global order, wherein we'll try to understand as to what is the argument that the author makes that the current Indo US relationship would negatively impact India's ability to form its leadership in the new global order. Now, the first reason given by the author is that the United States is trying to co opt India or trying to make India a partner into ensuring the containment of China. However, according to the author, there is a problem of India becoming a partner of the US strategic framework trying to contain China, wherein, according to the author, any partnership that India has with the United States will not help India in resolving the India China boundary conflict. When, according to the author, the main issue of conflict between India and China is the boundary issues, such as in Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh. And by partnering with the United States strategic framework, which is aimed at containment of China, it will not help in resolving the main issue of conflict between India and China. Now, the second reason given by the author is with regards to the Comcasa Agreement, where you already know that India and the United States recently signed the Comcasa Agreement during the 2+2 dialogue. And this Comcasa Agreement allows India for the purchase of sensitive defense technologies from the US and the sharing of encryption intelligence between India and the United States. However, the author has made an argument that any purchase by India of American communication equipment for military purposes would cause India to be dependent upon the US driven defense imports. When the author has made an argument that if you take a look at India's major defense importers, such as Russia, Israel, UK, France, Germany, United States, wherein what you see here that most of the countries such as Israel, France, UK, Germany are all allies of the United States. Wherein the author has raised concerns that if India follows through in purchasing defense communication equipments from the United States under the Comcasa Agreement, it would increase India's reliance upon the United States and its allies for defense equipment imports. And therefore, what is required is that India should maintain an equidistant between Russia and the US and its allies for imports of defense equipment. Now, the third argument of the author is a continuation of the second argument. Now, you already know that the United States has put sanctions on Russia under its CARTSA law, and the United States is continuously pressuring India to reduce India's defense engagement with Russia. Now, as you already understand, except Russia, all of India's major defense equipment importers includes the United States and its allies. And therefore, the author makes an argument that if India agrees to the United States' pressure to reduce its defense engagement with Russia, India would become solely rely on America and its allies for its defense equipment imports. And therefore, the author raises a concern that India's military would then become dependent upon the United States, and therefore, India would indirectly become a follower of the US dictated global order. Now, the fourth and the last reason given by the author is with regards to Pakistan, wherein the author makes an argument that the United States has been unable to ensure any change in Pakistan's ability for cross border terrorism in India. And moreover, the United States has been unable to stop the expansion of the nuclear arsenal of Pakistan that threaten India. Wherein, according to the author, the United States has shown no solid results of it being able to pressurize Pakistan based on India's national interest. Now, the author is making an argument that one of the biggest security threat to India is the cross-border terrorism from Pakistan and the expansion of nuclear arsenal of Pakistan that threatens India. And in both of these cases, the United States has been unable to help India. When, according to the author, if India continues to rely upon the United States to pressurize Pakistan based on these security threats, it would serve no purpose. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the four reasons given by the author which showcase a risk of India becoming a follower of the United States-based global order. When the author has given a recommendation that India should continue to maintain its strategic autonomy. When according to the author, India should maintain equidistant relationship with the major powers. When the author gives a recommendation that India should maintain relationship with the major powers such as the United States, China, Russia, among others, based on India's own national interest, and India should not become a follower of either the United States or any other country, and that India should form its own leadership in the global order. So now hopefully you've understood the various aspects given in this editorial with regards to India-US relationship, wherein hopefully you've understood the various risks in the current Indo-US relationship that may cause India of becoming a follower of the US dictated global order. Now with regards to UPSC Civil Service Examination syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS paper 2 within the section International Relations. Now apart from this, what you should do is understand all of these risks that have been highlighted by the author in this editorial and see it within the context of the reasons of divergence in Indo-US relationship which we had discussed in the Daily News Simplified or the DNS of 1st September, wherein the joint analysis of both of these articles would give you a comprehensive understanding of the reasons of concerns in India-US relationship. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 11. Now there are two aspects that you need to understand from this article. First is, what is Jhum cultivation? And second is, what are the observations of the NITI Aayog report on shifting cultivation? Now let us first understand as to what is Jhum cultivation. Now it is a form of agriculture in which an area of ground is cleared of vegetation and cultivated for a few years. Afterwards, it is then abandoned for a new area until its fertility has been naturally restored. And it is during this phase cultivation is moved to a new area. Now hopefully up till here you have understood that the Jhum cultivation is a form of agriculture in which area of a ground is cleared of vegetation and then cultivated for a few years. Later, when that area has shown signs of exhaustion, it is abandoned until its fertility is naturally restored, and therefore the cultivators move to a new area. Now this new area of ground is often cleared by slash and burn method, wherein trees, bushes, etc. are cleared by slashing, while the remaining vegetation is cleared by being burnt. Now the ashes of the remaining vegetation add potash to make the ground more fertile, and the seeds are sown after the rains. Now hopefully up till here you have also understood that for Jhum cultivation, the area of ground which has to be cleared is often cleared by slash and burn methods, wherein the trees, bushes, etc. are slashed to the ground, while the remaining vegetation is burnt, and it is the ashes of the remaining vegetation that have been burned which add potash to the soil to make it more fertile. And after this, the seeds are sown after the rains. So now hopefully you've understood the various aspects of Jhum cultivation. When you have to understand that Jhum cultivation is a form of slash and burn agriculture, which is also known as shifting cultivation, wherein the practice of shifting cultivation or slash and burn agriculture within the northeast region of India is called Jhum cultivation. Now with regards to your civil service examination syllabus, and more specifically with regards to your prelims examination, Jhum cultivation would be a part of Indian geography and within the subsection Physical and Economic Geography of India. While with regards to your mains examination, it would first be placed in GS paper 2 within the section Geography of the World, and in similar terms, it would also be placed in GS paper 3 within the section Economic Development and within the subsection Major Cropping Patterns in various parts of the country. When you have to understand that shifting cultivation or the slash and burn agriculture is called with different names in different parts of the country, and it is within the specific northeastern region of India that this form of agriculture is called Jhum cultivation. And so now hopefully you've understood as to what is Jhum cultivation. Now let us understand the second aspect of this article, which is the observations of the NITI Aayog report on Jhum cultivation. Wherein this NITI Aayog report is called the Mission on Shifting Cultivation Towards a Transformational Approach, wherein the first observation made in this report is that the Ministry of Agriculture should lead the mission on shifting cultivation. Wherein according to the NITI Aayog report, if the Ministry of Agriculture leads the mission on shifting cultivation, then it would ensure that there is a synchronization between the various departments of the central and the state government that focus upon shifting cultivation. The second observation given in this report is to recognize land that is there for shifting cultivation as agricultural land. But what is currently being done is that land which is being used for shifting cultivation is currently being recognized as forest land. Now this NITI Aayog report has highlighted that in various states, especially in the northeastern region, what is currently happening is that whenever a land is being used to cultivate for slash and burn agriculture, it is recognized as agricultural land. And whenever farmers leave this land and shift to a new agricultural land, the initial land is then recognized as forest land. And what this currently does is that one piece of land is being recognized both as agricultural land and as forest land. And this creates various issues and problems with regards to land development, either for agricultural or for forest. And it is within that context that the NITI Aayog wants that land which is being used for shifting cultivation should be recognized as agricultural land and not as forest land. The second observation given in this report is that there has been a 70% drop in shifting cultivation between 2000 and 2010. And therefore, the NITI Aayog report has highlighted that it requires a major oversight since shifting cultivation produces majority of the food in the northeastern region. Now, the fourth observation made in the report is that the government should extend credit facilities to those who practice shifting cultivation. The fifth observation made in this report is that the government should ensure effective public distribution system for farmers during the transition period which occurs in the Jhum cultivation. Now, as you already know, that in Jhum cultivation, which is a form of shifting cultivation, farmers move from one piece of land after it has lost its fertility to a new piece of land. However, during this transition period, the farmers and their families are vulnerable towards food security. And therefore, the NITI Aayog report has recommended that the government should ensure effective public distribution system for farmers during this transition period that occurs in Jhum cultivation. Now, the sixth and the last observation made in the NITI Aayog report, as highlighted in the article, is to legally categorize shifting cultivation fallows as regenerating fallows. Now, fallow land in basic terms means any land that is used for cultivation but has been left idle. So, what happens in shifting cultivation is that when farmers transition from one land to another, the initial land becomes fallow, and it is this land that the NITI Aayog report wants to be categorized as regenerating fallows, meaning that this land can either be used again for agriculture or either this land can be again used to regenerate forest. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the six main observations that have been highlighted in the NITI Aayog report titled Mission on Shifting Cultivation Towards a Transformational Approach. Within the first main observation given in this report is that the Ministry of Agriculture should lead mission on shifting cultivation, wherein this would ensure that there is synchronization between the various departments of the central and the state government that focus upon shifting cultivation. The second main observation given in the report is to recognize land that is used for shifting cultivation as agricultural land and not as forest land, wherein what currently happens in several northeastern states is that whenever a farmer transitions from one land to another, the initial land becomes idle. And what happens in several northeastern states is that during the period in which this land is being cultivated, it is recognized as agricultural land, and when the farmers leave this land, it is then recognized as forest land. And this creates confusion because just one piece of land is recognized in two different formats and therefore becomes under the purview of two different laws and two different departments. And it is within that context that the NITI Aayog report wants to recognize land that is used for shifting cultivation as just agricultural land. Now, the third observation given in this report is that there has been a 70% drop in shifting cultivation between 2000 and 2010, and therefore the NITI Aayog has recommended that there should be a major oversight by the Government of India since shifting cultivation produces majority of the food in the northeastern region. The fourth recommendation given in the report is to extend credit facilities to those who are engaged in shifting cultivation. And the fifth recommendation given in the report is to ensure effective public distribution system for farmers which are involved in Jhum cultivation, wherein what happens during the transition period is that the farmer is moving from one land to another. And during this period, the farmers and its families are vulnerable towards food security. And it is during this transition period that the NITI Aayog report wants the government to effectively implement the public distribution system. And the sixth and the last recommendation given in this report is that NITI Aayog wants to legally categorize shifting cultivation fallows as regenerating fallows. Now, fallows are basically cultivated land which has been left idle. And by legally categorizing these fallow lands as regenerating fallows, it can be used to regenerate either for agriculture or to regenerate forest. So now hopefully you have understood the various observations given in the NITI Aayog report with regards to shifting cultivation or in particular Jhum cultivation. Now let us understand as to where this would be placed in your UPSC examination syllabus. Now the NITI Aayog report would be placed in GS paper 3 within the section Economic Development, within the subsection Major Cropping Patterns in various parts of the country, Public Distribution System Limitations and Revamping, so as to include farmers that are involved in shifting cultivation, issues related to food security, and lastly, with regards to land reforms in India, and more specifically, the land that is being used for shifting cultivation in the northeastern region, and the issues related to it being classified as either forest land or agricultural land. Now, there are two questions for practice which have been previously asked in the UPSC mains examination, wherein the first question was asked in the 2002 mains exam, which had asked write short notes on Jhum cultivation, process and consequences, and the second question was asked in the mains examination of 2005, which had asked write note on negative impacts of shifting cultivation. However, what you can do with regards to the second question is to try to answer this in two formats. First, from the perspective of geography from GS paper 1, and second, from the perspective of economic development in GS paper 3. Wherein, when you're writing from the perspective of GS paper 1, you would be writing the negative geographical impacts of shifting cultivation. And when you're writing from the perspective of GS paper 3 of economic development, you would be writing the negative economic impacts of shifting cultivation. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 3. Now what we'll try to understand from this article is about fluoride contamination, and we'll try to understand this from the perspective of prelims examination. Now the first aspect that we'll try to understand about fluoride contamination is its impact, wherein fluoride contamination causes dental and skeletal fluorosis, wherein it causes spotting and staining of teeth, and apart from this, it also causes the weakening of the backbone and limbs. The second aspect about fluoride contamination that you need to know is that it is dangerous above 1.5 milligram per liter of water. Now, the main cause of fluoride contamination in humans is due to the consumption of groundwater by humans, which is contaminated with fluoride. Now, there are three reasons as to how groundwater becomes contaminated with fluoride, and these three reasons are relevant to be understood with regards to your prelims examination. Wherein the first reason is that if the groundwater passes through fluoride rich rocks. The second reason is due to mining, and the third reason is due to the flow of phosphate fertilizers into the groundwater. Now, the fourth aspect that you should understand is that low level of ingestion of fluoride is actually beneficial to the body, wherein a low level ingestion of fluoride actually prevents certain types of dental problems and is also therefore used in toothpaste. So now hopefully up till here you've understood that fluoride contamination causes dental and skeletal fluorosis, wherein fluoride contamination causes spotting and staining of teeth and also leads to the crippling of the backbone and limbs. Now the presence of fluoride in water is considered dangerous if it is above 1.5 milligram per liter of water. Now the main cause of fluoride contamination in human is due to the presence of fluoride in groundwater, wherein groundwater gets contaminated with fluoride if the groundwater passes through fluoride-rich rocks. Secondly, due to mining, and lastly, due to the flow of phosphate-based fertilizers into the groundwater. Now, apart from this, what you should also remember is that low-level ingestion of fluoride is actually beneficial to the body, wherein it prevents various dental problems, and therefore fluoride is also used in toothpaste. Wherein with regards to your prelims examination syllabus, fluoride contamination of groundwater is relevant with regards to general issues on environmental ecology, and fluoride contamination in human is relevant with regards to the syllabus section general science. Now previously, similar questions have been asked in the prelims examination, wherein this question was asked in the prelims of 2017, which had given three chemicals and had asked whether these three chemicals is likely to be found in these regularly consumed materials. Wherein you should understand that lead is found in lipsticks, vegetable oil is found in soft drinks, and monosodium glycomate or MSG is also found in Chinese fast food, and therefore the correct answer to this question would be D 1, 2 and 3. While in similar terms, a question was asked in the prelims of 2013, which had asked which of the following pollutants can be found in India's drinking water, wherein the correct answer to this question is that arsenic, fluoride and uranium can be found as pollutants in India's drinking water, while sorbitol is a form of sweetener which is found in food products, while formaldehyde is an organic compound and is not a pollutant in drinking water. And therefore the correct answer to this question would be C 1, 3 and 5. When a question for your practice is with regards to fluoride, consider the following statements, and the correct answer to this question would be given in the end section of this video. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken the first article from page 1 and the second article from page 13. Now, what both of these articles talk about is the merger of Dina Bank, Vijaya Bank, and Bank of Baroda. So, what we'll try to understand from both of these articles is first the background to bank mergers, and secondly, the need for bank mergers. Now, let us first understand as to why this article is in the news, and then understand the background of bank mergers. Now, the central government has proposed the merger of three public sector banks, which are the Bank of Baroda, the Dina Bank, and the Vijaya Bank. And this proposed merger would create India's third largest bank. Now, the decision for this merger was taken at a meeting of a ministerial panel called the Alternative Mechanism, and this meeting was headed by the finance minister. And this merger of the Dina Vijay and Bank of Baroda would follow the merger of five associate banks such as the State Bank of Patalia and others with the State Bank of India. Now, the consolidation among public sector banks has been an old policy recommendation in India, wherein the Narasimha Committee report of 1991 had recommended a three-tier banking structure in India. Now, the Narasimha Committee had recommended that the government should establish three large banks with international presence, about 8 to 10 national banks, and a large number of regional and local banks. And in similar terms, the PJ Nayak Committee had also recommended the merger of public sector banks. Now, what had happened earlier is that in August of 2017, the government of India in principle gave the approval of public sector banks to merge through the alternative mechanism, wherein the main reason for this Union Cabinet decision was that the merger of weak banks with strong banks would prevent a banking crisis in India through the consolidation of weak banks with strong banks, wherein this merged large bank would be better capitalized and would have better expertise to handle large credits and also to handle large non-performing assets. So now hopefully up till here you've understood as to why both of these articles were in the news. And secondly, you've also gotten a basic understanding to the background of bank mergers in India, wherein you understand first the recommendations of the Narasimha Committee, secondly the recommendation of the PJ Nayak Committee, and lastly of the most recent alternative mechanism that was introduced by the Union Cabinet in August of 2017. So now let us understand the various reasons for the need of merging of banks. Now, the first main reason for the need for merger of banks is due to the fragmented banking structure in India, wherein most of the public sector banks in India are competing with each other, wherein most of the public sector banks in India have the same business model, are competing in the same segments such as home loan market, saving accounts, fixed deposit, apart from other various segments. And apart from this, most of the public sector banks in India are also competing within the same geographies. Wherein, if you take an example of major cities in India such as Delhi, Bombay, Kolkata, Bangalore, or Chennai, most of the major public sector banks are providing the same services, and most of the public sector banks in India are present in each of these cities. And because of them having the same business model and competing in the same segments and same geographies, the Indian banking sector is highly fragmented. Now, the second reason for the need for merger of banks is to build capacity so as to meet the growing credit demand in India. Wherein, with the growth of the Indian economy, India needs to have global sized banks which can support the investment of foreign and Indian companies within India and the investment of Indian companies in foreign countries. And therefore, for the public sector banks to meet the growing credit demand of the economy, they need to be well capitalized and have to enhance their lending capacity to large companies and for large projects, wherein the consolidation or the merger of four or five banks in India would create large banks which would have the capacity to fund large companies and large projects and thereby meet the growing credit demand of the Indian economy. Now, the third main reason given in the support for merger of banks, wherein there is a need for Indian public sector banks to have a larger capital base to manage the growing non performing assets, wherein the public sector banks are amongst the most affected by the non performing asset problem in India. And there have been suggestions that a consolidation of banks, meaning the merger of banks, can help them manage the problem of non performing assets more effectively. So, now hopefully, you've understood the three main reasons given in the article that support the merging of banks in India. Now, let us understand the particular reasons for the merger of Dina, Vijaya, and Bank of Baroda. Now, the main rationale for the present merger of Dina, Vijay, and Bank of Baroda is to ensure merger of a weak bank, which is the Dina Bank, with two strong banks, which are Vijaya and Bank of Baroda. Wherein what has happened is that Dina Bank has the highest net NPA ratio or the non performing asset ratio among the three banks. And apart from this, it also has the lowest capital adequacy ratio and is the only bank among the three to have a negative return on assets. And therefore, what the intention is that the strength of the Vijaya Bank and the Bank of Baroda would improve the NPA ratio, the capital adequacy ratio, and the return on assets for Dena Bank. And apart from this, the merger of Dena Bank also became necessary because it has been placed under the prompt corrective action framework of the Reserve Bank of India. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the specific reason for the merger of Dina, Vijaya and the Bank of Baroda. Now you have to understand that this news is currently in transition, wherein we'll have to wait and see on how the merger of these three banks moves forward. When in regards to UPSC syllabus, the merger of these three banks would first be placed in your prelims examination, first in the section current events of national importance, and secondly within economic development. And apart from this, it is also relevant with regards to your mains examination within GS paper 3 and in the section economic development and within the subsection Indian economy and issues relating to planning and mobilization of growth and development. Now, a question for practice is discuss the advantages and concerns of the merger of public sector banks in India in light of the recommendations of the Narasimha Committee and the PJ Nayak Committee. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this article talks about is the recent drift in ties between India and Nepal. Wherein the first reason given in the article for the recent drift in India-Nepal relationship is Nepal's refusal for full participation in the recently held BIMSTEC military drill. Wherein what had happened is that the Nepalese army initially had agreed to participate in the BIMSTEC anti-terrorist military exercise. However, the political executive or the government of Nepal later refused for the participation of Nepal in the BIMSTEC military exercise. And this Nepali refusal for full participation in the BIMSTEC military exercise, which was led by India, and caused concerns in India and became one of the reasons for the drift in India-Nepal relationship. Now, the second reason highlighted in the article is of the recent military exercise between Nepal and China, wherein after refusing India for full participation in India-led BIMSTEC military exercise, Nepal held a military exercise with China, which further raised concerns within India. The third recent cause of drift in India-Nepal relationship is of the Chinese connectivity projects in Nepal, wherein what has happened is that Nepal recently finalized a connectivity proposal to link Kathmandu in Nepal to Shingsei in China, wherein this alternative connectivity route will ensure Nepal an alternative trade route apart from India. Wherein if you take a look at this map, the connectivity project would connect Kathmandu in Nepal to Shiksei in Tibet in China, which would further connect it to Lhasa, which is the capital of Tibet. And therefore this route would provide Nepal an alternative route for transportation, connectivity and market apart from India. However, India has raised concern that Nepal may also fall into a debt trap like Sri Lanka and Pakistan. And the fourth and the last reason given in the article for the recent drift in India-Nepal relationship is because of past resentment of the Prime Minister of Nepal, KP Oli, wherein the current Nepalese government under KP Oli continues to blame India for the informal Madesi blockade during 2015. And apart from this, KP Oli also blames India for destabilizing his previous government during 2015-16. So now hopefully up till here you understood the four main reasons given by the author in this editorial of the recent causes of drift between India and Nepal, wherein the first reason given by the author is of Nepal's refusal for full participation in the BIMSTEC military exercise, wherein this BIMSTEC military exercise was being led by India and the Nepalese army had initially agreed for full participation. But what later happened was that the Nepalese government or the political executive later refused to fully participate in this BIMSTEC military exercise and only sent observers. And this refusal by Nepal for full participation raised concerns within India, wherein what also happened was that Nepal also participated in a military exercise with China, but refused to participate in the BIMSTEC military exercise. And apart from this, another reason for cause of drift between India and Nepal is because of the Chinese connectivity projects in Nepal, wherein Nepal recently finalized a connectivity proposal to link Kathmandu in Nepal with Sheksay in Tibetan region of China, wherein this would provide Nepal an alternative route apart from India and would also provide China further inroads into Nepal. And there is a concern in India that Nepal may also fall into a Chinese debt trap similar to Sri Lanka and Pakistan. And the fourth and the last reason given in this editorial of the recent drift between India and Nepal is because of the past resentment of the current Prime Minister KP Oli, wherein the current Nepalese government continues to blame India for the Madesi blockade during 2015. And apart from this, KP Oli also blames India for destabilizing his previous government during 2015 and 16. wherein with regards to UPSC syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS paper 2 within the section International Relations and within the subsection India and its Neighborhood Relations.
And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.